Hi, and welcome to the Fancy Commie YouTube. Today, I'm joined by Cherise Jefferson. She was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and she's a national political strategist who blends creativity, strategy, and influence to move policy and people. With 15 plus years navigating the intersection of government, public education, and national campaigns, she's raised millions, advised high-profile leaders, and helped shape policy across healthcare, public health, education, and national security. Her career launched at a top Georgia lobbying firm where she quickly became a leading fundraiser for Hillary Clinton when she ran for president, as well as Barack Obama. She's since driven initiatives impacting 46,000 plus students and brokered partnerships across federal and corporate sectors. She holds a nationally accredited degree in the arts from Valdosta State University and a master's degree in HR management from Troy State University. Welcome, Cherise. It's so great to chat with you today. You must be really busy as a political strategist right now.
It is a very busy time.
Well, I wanted to first ask you, so yesterday, I was glued to CNN yesterday, and I saw Abigail Spanberger became the first woman governor of Virginia. Zohran Mamdani became the mayor of New York City, ousting the Cuomos, and Mikey Sherrill, the Navy helicopter pilot, became the governor of New Jersey. As a political strategist, what are your thoughts on those? I mean, you don't live in any of those states, but what are your thoughts on what happened yesterday in the elections?
The entire turnout was very predictable. Typically, when we are in off season like this, where the president has a year or two in, parties typically do change. And so it kind of follows the rhythm of what we see in politics. But particularly when you take a look at where we are as a nation with prices of everything high, from gas to home ownership, to cost of living and now healthcare, and we don't see any of those costs going down. This is where you typically see a shift. We also saw in every last one of those elections crossover votes. So people who were Republicans who crossed over to Democrats. So the outcome was very much predictable.
Yeah, and it was interesting too, looking at the exit polling. Pretty much every exit poll they did, it was the economy was number one. I think immigration was number two. In California, I think immigration was like a top concern. In Virginia, at least according to CNN and according to people I have talked to, fired feds that maybe like one or two people today on Instagram, but people were very motivated to vote for Abigail Spanberger in Northern Virginia because they lost their jobs working in the federal government, which is kind of what we were going to talk about today. The mass layoffs, the politicization of science, I would say, is another really concerning topic. So, how do you think we got here to the place we are today, politically?
So when it comes to Congress, we didn't suddenly become dysfunctional. Gridlock that we see in Congress was engineered, and it's been engineered for over a decade. I think at the root of it, it always starts with greed, particularly within each party. You have people who essentially like to climb ladders. And oftentimes, when you see those power grabs, they become so intense that the leaders within the parties will even undermine their own to climb that ladder. They will literally deface what they see within the parties to essentially get to the top, and it spills over into the communities. And so as a result of what we have seen intra-party wise, particularly with the Democratic Party, we are now where we are. There were a number of us, and just to be very honest here, we knew that Kamala Harris was not going to win the presidency. There were a number of congressional members who knew that she also wasn't going to win. And that's because of just the backstory behind things that took place within the Biden Harris administration. And so we are where we are just simply because of the power grabs, the greed, and simply forgetting what public service is really all about. What used to be a healthy party debate has now turned into internal combat, essentially. And extreme polarization hasn't just replaced bipartisanship, it's literally replaced party unity with internal battles. And until we can fix that, I don't think that we're going to have any upward mobility, but I do have a solution. that may not be popular, but I do think that this solution is going to work.
What is your solution?
I think that the American people are going to have to make a really tough decision. And I said this in a podcast just a couple of weeks ago. We have seen the economy essentially tank with two presidents, Democrat and Republican. We've seen our poverty gap widen. Healthcare is not getting better, it's getting worse. The American dream is a much farther distance than what we have hoped for. The American people are going to have to make a tough decision. And again, I said this on a podcast not long ago. I think that we're going to have to fire 90 to 95% of Congress in order to get this country back to where not only we want it to be, but where it should be.
That's interesting you say that, because yesterday this shutdown became the longest government shutdown ever. And the last government shutdown, the longest ever, cost $5 billion. This one's going to be even longer than that. So it will be even more expensive. What truly kills me in our current political discourse is this idea that we just don't have any money for anything in our government. Like, we don't have money for SNAP benefits. We don't have money to hire our federal workers. We don't have money for Medicare and Medicaid. But at the same time, there was money to bail out Argentina. There's money to do immigration enforcement. They work overtime. Meanwhile, other federal employees haven't had a job. They're going to food banks. They're exhausting all of Maryland's food banks. And when you look at the big picture, it just is so incredibly bleak. It's like, when I watch the news, it's almost like I have to accept anything that the lawmakers do. Like, they wanted to defund NPR. We defunded NPR. What am I going to do about it? I don't have anything I can do about it. But you're saying we should just vote out all of our lawmakers. And I think that would honestly be such a great solution. But I just think that I live in Oklahoma, and there was one day where my lawmaker posted this Instagram reel and basically called everyone going to the No Kings Day rally. Well, he did some name calling, and I read that and I was like, well, that's mean. And it was like several different ones, like left radicals, the usual stuff that you see. And then that mysteriously got deleted. But it's like, but now James Langford, our senator, posted this Instagram reel, and it was like, I support federal workers. And it was like maybe a week ago, when all the federal workers had already been laid off. It's like the messaging, the quote unquote messaging, doesn't really make any sense, because like one day they're taking away everything. The next day they're like, oh, we actually love the federal workers, but like many of them have been laid off. So I really think that people will still continue to vote for these people. I have ACA healthcare. My premium went up 87%. I'm still planning to pay it because I need healthcare. But this one guy, he posted on Instagram, show him the power of we the people. And I was like, what is we the people about taking away my healthcare? But I feel like that's what makes these lawmakers popular, is they are really sticking it to the people they perceive as their political enemies. I saw your other interview with, I don't remember what that lady's name was, but you were talking about the people in power don't like each other. Do you think they will like each other enough to actually open the government, or do you think this government shutdown will last forever? Like, how long do you think this government shutdown will last?
I'm 100% sure that it's going to go on for a while. And because of the wins with the Democrats, I think that they're going to stiffen it up even more. And that's the unfortunate part. I don't believe that we can continue as a nation in the space that we're in. And my solution to replacing most members of Congress is to replace them with, in my opinion, not only local community workers, but also the people who I know who could run this country tremendously are the federal workers, particularly the furloughed federal workers, or even the federal workers who left government because of what they saw with Elon Musk and President Trump, because it was a number of them who did. Those would be the absolute best people to run the federal government. And if you've ever worked in FedGov like I have, I've worked as a contractor, but it's almost virtually the same. You have to take an oath. In my case, I had security clearance, and I had to agree to a specific commitment not to share certain things. I had an NDA on top of my security clearance, just to give you an idea of how intensified my security clearance was. But at the same time, working with the federal workers, they know exactly how government should function. It would essentially be a shift from administration to legislation, which they could easily do because they understand exactly how the dynamic flows and how to make government work. I got very concerned when Elon Musk, and I'm still concerned now because of the rumblings involving the furloughed employees, that President Trump wants to keep these folks furloughed so that they can quit. Once you destabilize the government, you dismantle this entire nation, and vice versa. If you dismantle the federal workforce, you destabilize this entire country. The federal workforce is the bedrock of not just America's economy, but the world's economy. So people oftentimes will say, I hate big government, but big government is big for a reason. It's big because we do big things. And yes, there is a lot of politics. Yes, there is corruption in the federal government. There's corruption in the private sector. Right? But this is why you have watchdogs. This is why you have inspector generals. This is why you have people who oversee and ensure accountability. But when you literally shave off the federal workforce the way that Elon Musk and President Trump has done, you put this nation in a position to where it cannot thrive. Everything cannot be replaced with artificial intelligence. It will literally render the human worker obsolete if we're not careful. So I'm saying, because Congress can't get in front of the 8 ball, let the American people get in front of the 8 ball. We need those federal workers to go into Congress. Those are the ones who I think will be able to lead this country.
Well, so that's what I mean. Usually, I would say most of the time, historically, Congress has done its job. But this Congress, and I watch a lot of C-SPAN, it just feels like the Republicans know that Donald Trump will sign anything they send to Donald Trump. So then they just pass what he wants. And then it's not like the Democrats can really do much. I mean, I watched the filibuster, or I don't know if it was filibuster. It was like Hakeem Jeffries stayed up all night and gave like an 8 hour long speech. And I went to the gym and I came back and he was still speaking. And there's not much they can do. It's almost like it just feels like our government just doesn't care about us. Like they took away public radio. They took away SNAP benefits, and I just went to go donate to like a local pantry and there was no food at it. And usually there's like tons of food. So it's like people are literally going hungry. But Congress hasn't worked, the House of Representatives hasn't worked for like 6 weeks and they're getting paid. I think I read they get paid $40,000 just during this time, which is quite a lot. Um, how is it possible for people to do anything about this if they're hungry, their healthcare is going up? Like, what are we supposed to do right now? Like, not just like federal employees, like that's a whole other issue which we can talk about, but like the average person, what do you think we're supposed to be doing right now? Like, I mean, voting, obviously, but besides that.
So what you're doing and what other podcasters are doing is very important work. You are getting the message out there. You're speaking to those of us who actually work on the inside and who know how the processes are in government. And now what I think the American people need to do is band together. There are a number of coalitions and organizations who are planning right now. Hashtag no incumbents is trending because people are saying we can't keep voting for the same people and think we're going to get different results. Just with the election alone with Mamdani, I'm just going to tell you this. I don't know if your listeners are aware of this. Hakeem Jeffries, he's a leader in the House. Chuck Schumer is a leader in the Senate. It took Congressman Jeffries the ninth hour before he endorsed Mamdani. Leader Schumer in the Senate, never endorsed Mamdani, and they come from the same state. So this is the kind of infighting that I'm speaking of that I think is really hurting what's happening, particularly on the Democratic side. I got a text message this morning from a very big leader on the Republican side, because he wanted me to read something that he's going to give to the chairman of the RNC. Again, I'm a political strategist. I work on both sides of the aisle. So I looked at the letter and he wanted to address why they lost last night. And of course, they are pointing the finger at President Trump and what he's doing with the tariffs. So it's a lot of gridlock that we have. That's not moving the country forward. So my suggestion is, with podcasters like yourself, who's getting the word out that, listen, we have major problems. We have real people who are hurting and no one is answering the call. We have got to come together along with the coalitions, and we've got to make a move to say, we're not going to vote these folks in, but we're also going to demand that our states, because the states have resources, we're going to demand that our states use the resources in their contingency funds. They have a contingency fund. States have emergency funds, and they are separate. If anyone tells you that, oh, they're the same, they're not. They have a contingency fund. They have an emergency fund. If they need to pull those funds together to help feed families, to help keep lights on, they can do that. Right here in Atlanta, our mayor made an affirmation that until the shutdown ends, people who are affected by the SNAP benefits and the furloughed employees, their light bills and their lights can stay on, essentially. Their utilities won't get cut off. So these are major moves that legislators can do and leaders in the states can do. The states have a lot of power. And so I think what we have to do is everyone needs to coalesce with one another, and let's not make it a party thing. We oftentimes want to separate ourselves and say, this is a Republican issue. This is a Democrat issue. I can tell you right now, the shutdown is not Republican or Democrat. It's both. When you peel back the layers of the onion, I can literally explain to you how we got to where we are with this shutdown. And it's not one party or the other, it's both. And again, if we keep voting for the same people, we're going to get the same results. I guarantee you, if all 535 members of Congress knew that they would be out of a job in 2026 and 2028, you best to believe this shutdown will end quick. You best to believe healthcare would be turned around. You best to believe that the American people would feel some sort of upward mobility. If they knew that their jobs were in jeopardy, they most absolutely would work together to fix it. I guarantee you that.
Well, so you think that, but it's like the more this Congress works, I feel like the more they're just trying to take away stuff from people. And then what kills me about this Congress is that first I was like, well, maybe we should shut this whole thing down early on, like when they were firing the federal workers, especially firing the scientific workforce. You're based in Atlanta, so you have the CDC right in your backyard. And someone actually came and tried to do gun violence at the CDC because they had a side effect of a COVID vaccine. Meanwhile, the workers at the CDC are like furloughed, and they're actually organizing to bring back. Part of what they do is like kind of political. Another part is like serving as a place to actually get health information now that all the science communicators at CDC and NIH are like fired. It's weird because in one of my videos, I don't remember which one I said this in, but I was like, when times get tough, it feels like critical thinking goes out the window. And And that's what happened in this case. I could ask you so many different questions about where we are at, and I think being a political strategist sounds really cool. But do you see a role for science in political strategizing right now, and what might that look like?
Absolutely. Political strategizing, it encompasses two things. So, it's a multifactorial discipline, I'll say that. So there is a side of political strategists who work on political campaigns. They are involved in the fundraising, the messaging, the outreach. They connect with lobbyists and special interest groups because that is who dominates Washington. Then there is the faction of the political strategizing that I'm a part of, which is policy, where you work on policy. And I work on policy with lobbyists. I work on policy with legislators. I work on policies with community activists. So I liaise between all of those sectors. And I was trained in the beginning to learn the mechanics of politics through fundraising. This is how I got a chance to actually work on Secretary Hillary Clinton's campaign when she ran for president, and then was switched to President Obama's campaign when he racked up the nomination in Minnesota. And I've also worked on the Republican side, not fundraising, but also just advising on areas where there's common ground, because oftentimes you will find common ground on select policies. But political science, it does deal with politics, which is essentially a medium of exchange. Okay, so people will ask me, what is the definition of politics? It's just nothing but a medium of exchange. And so there is a role for scientists and science because of the use of inductive and deductive reasoning. There is a role for science and scientists to actually work in this industry. In fact, I work with scientists every day. I have actually worked in one of those public health agencies that you mentioned at a very high level. I'm very familiar with what's happening over at the CDC. It's unfortunate, but I'm not surprised. And it's something that I saw coming. And hopefully, particularly with the CDC, the agency as a whole can get restored to where it can actually have the deliveries and the deliverables to the American people that it was intended to have. But the CDC has been struggling for years, whether it's a Democrat president or a Republican president. The CDC's problems have been in existence for a very long time. And I can tell you, having been over there, it is deeply troubling. I think what Secretary Kennedy is doing is very much different than what any other CDC or HHS secretary would do. I mean, he's just, he's really trying to navigate how do you restructure the agency to where it can work for the American people. Unfortunately, you have some scientists who are collateral damage, but the way that particular agency operates, as well as NIH and FDA, they operate in silos. So you'll have one group in CDC that may interface with another group in CDC, but they are very much siloed. It's really strange. And so when there's a catastrophe, it's very difficult for them to figure out exactly what to do. But I will say this, the CDC and NIH scientists are some of the best scientists in the world. I wish we could take the CDC and turn it into a hospital. Those are some of the most brilliant doctors in the world, that if I had a choice to go to our level 1 trauma center, and if CDC could treat me, I'd go to CDC. So we have to work to not keep them marginalized, but that's the problem right now. A lot of them are so marginalized, but they are so brilliant. I mean, the brilliance, they could literally cure every disease that we have if we give them the tools, the capability, and if we can eradicate the politics out of it. So those are my thoughts about, in a nutshell, about science. But certainly we need to incorporate scientists within the political structure and the political framework, and there's definitely a place for that.
Well, scientists could run for office, and some fired feds are running for office that have a science background. It just always feels like, to me, when there's science being discussed, it's like some separate issue. Like, it's not a separate issue. It's part of our lives. Like, that's how we got to being in climate change. We fired all the experts. It's just like, it's important to work across the aisle for this. But I don't think it's a partisan issue to say, like, when we need an expert for something, we just go straight to the expert. Just because the experts say, like, Donald Trump wanted to fire and did fire the Bureau of Labor Statistics director because he didn't like the jobs numbers. So then he just fired them. And now the jobs numbers are not even coming out because the government shutdown. But it's easy to look at Donald Trump, especially for me as a Democrat, and be like, oh, wow, well, obviously, look at that. You fired all the experts, and now you have some data that looks like what you want, and I guess you're happy now. But that's not something that's unique to Donald Trump. It's something that happens all throughout government. There's a number of government jobs, and even like being an intern in like different state legislatures, you only can have a political science or journalism or government background. A lot of those people never take a math class. I don't really feel confident in, especially now that our government is doing nothing. Like, I make $45,000 in a year. Congress is getting $45,000 for 6 weeks of doing nothing. I am absolutely livid about that. So, going back to your point about how we can vote all of these people out of office, how do you think we can vote all of these people out of office?
It's very easy. Each state will have coalitions or organizations in each city, and because they're districts. So we know who's in each district. For example, I live in Atlanta. I know who represents Congress in every single district, Republican and Democrat. And it's a matter of working with the organizations within those districts. Now, me, I'm a political strategist, so I start with the donors. You got to think about it. Kamala Harris had not one, this is what they tell you guys, but it was $2 billion that she had in 3 months. It was not 1 billion. They didn't want to hurt you all too bad, but yeah, she had like $2 billion that she raised in 3 months. And that's something, but we can't feed people. But she still lost, and they knew she was going to lose. But nevertheless, I would start with the donors, because the donors give money to people who they believe will help support whatever business agenda that they have or whatever interest that they have. I always will start with the donors first. Go to the donors and encourage the donors to support another candidate. And like I said, I think that federal workers should be the ones first to go into these roles. And not just any federal workers, specific federal workers, those who have actually dealt with policy. Because you got to think about it, federal workers actually deal with policy while they're in the federal government. And right here in Georgia, for example, a federal worker that we know who worked directly under the Biden administration is now running for Secretary of State as a Democrat. And I think that, she's ready because she understood, based on where she was in the federal government, she knew exactly what she needed to do in order to launch a campaign and actually go into the role of Secretary of State. So each state, again, has different cities, locales, and I would reach out to organizations, start having conversations with those organizations and say, listen, we've got to get behind a different candidate other than what we have. We have to. Because you can love your congressperson individually, and that's fine. Most of them individually are great. I promise you they are, on both sides. Individually, they are superb. The problem is they cannot work together. When they come together, it's a nightmare. And I think a lot of that has to do with the special interest, the outside lobbying, the special interest, and then the protection systems that they want to keep for themselves. So they can't really work together. And also the egos. I mean, some of their egos, I have seen them. Their egos are bigger than Mexico. And that's part of the reason why we can't in the shutdown too, because the egos, I keep saying The Democrats have no power. Okay. So they're going to have to make some concessions. The Republicans are in charge. They're going to have to make some concessions. It's both. It's both. So my thing is, why not, guys, come together and make some concessions? I was on a status call last week, and of course, the left got upset with me because I said the same thing that I just told you. You guys have no power, so you're going to have to concede, because even though you're going to win these elections, and it's going to stiffen even more. It's going to stiffen your desire to keep the government shut down going, thinking that you're going to twist the hands of the Republicans, but the Republicans have the power. How about let's come together, let's make some at least temporary concessions until we're able to move forward. Okay? Let's fund SNAP benefits. Let's make the Obamacare subsidies move forward. People need health care. Okay? Republicans are affected by health care just like Democrats. These are bipartisan issues, but it's the egos. And that's what angers me the most. And quite frankly, it literally keeps my blood pressure up because I see it. And I'm saying to myself, it's not logical for either of you all to continue to fight like this. The Republicans, they don't have a backup plan for health care. So if you don't have a backup plan for health care, let's continue the Obamacare subsidies. Okay? You don't have a backup plan. You don't even have an idea of a plan. So why are we hurting the American people and continuing to hurt the American people when we know we can do something different? And so when you're in a seat like me and you see these kinds of things and they're not budging, the only solution, in my opinion, is to fire them all. And I'm saying 90 to 95%, because you need at least 5 to 10% who are incumbents to stay there, because being in Congress is a learning curve, and you need those 5 to 10% of the people to help guide the new people along the way. But for the most part, I'd get rid of every last one of them, other than, 90 to 95% of them. I mean, that is really the only choice, in my opinion.
Well, it's just like here in Oklahoma, I'm working actually not only on one, but two campaigns, two different campaigns, one in Oklahoma's 5th district and one in Oklahoma's 4th district, to get rid of the incumbents because they have done nothing and we're a red state. So they voted. I'm really bitter that they voted to defund PBS. They have said nothing about all this immigration stuff. I was just in the National Mall, and I didn't realize the National Park Police are now doing federal immigration operations. And it's like all of this just goes on. And not only is no one not stopping it, there's people that are actually supporting it. And then when your leaders support something, then everyone else supports it too, because that's what your leader is saying. And I feel like we're slowly descending into, if not fascism, one of those political systems where every day you just look at the news and you're like, we'll never get out of this. Like, we're just, this is the way it is. Like, kind of in like, I'm Persian, kind of like in Iran, you know how like their government will just go out and just like shoot people in the street or like throw them in jail. I feel like that's where we're going to. And I think you're right. Congress won't do anything until it's their jobs that are kind of on the line. But I just feel like it takes so much to get the American people to do anything. Like we could take SNAP benefits away like as a nation, and there would be people in the streets like cheering because there are some cruel people out there. And it's like, how did we get to this? I think like another part of the political strategy should be to true leadership of like, this is how you're actually a good person, like as a political leader. I've been following Kamala Harris's book tour, and I'm waiting for her to announce that she's running for president so that I can vote for her. She said something really interesting about the glass ceiling on one of her Instagram reels. She was like, when you break the glass ceiling, it is transformative or something because it creates glass shards and you bleed because of the glass shards. So like, do you think that will change the political landscape if like we get like a breath of fresh air into like democracy and kind of revive democracy? Or do you think that the politicians will continue their tired talking points and get on their ego trips about how important they are?
I think it really depends on what the American people do. I think if the American people make a statement in 2026 and vote in new leaders for Congress, I think that that's going to be a game changer for the presidency. Those are my thoughts about that. I just don't know if until the American people make that big step, I think things are going to be more of the same.
Yeah, and I think like another thing is too, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been basically only watching election coverage, is like a lot of people voted for Donald Trump and Trump aligned people because they wanted to save money at the grocery store. But now that they see that there's no money being saved at the grocery store, things have gotten even more expensive. I think that people that didn't vote are going to start voting again. Like New Jersey had the greatest turnout since like 2005, which is like 20 years. So maybe the one good thing about our political time, there's very few good things about our political time, but one positive thing could be that people finally take democracy into their own hands and actually vote for people that they truly feel represent them. And that hopefully we'll have a bunch of good leaders to choose from in the 2026 midterms.
In order for us to move this country forward, we're going to have to elect different leaders in 2026. And I promise you, if majority of Congress knew that they would be out of a job no matter what, we'd be out of this shutdown. We'll be out of a shutdown very quickly. That's for sure. And healthcare would have some sort of resolution. I don't understand why during the shutdown that some members or some federal workers can't get their paychecks, but Congress gets their paychecks. I mean, if you're going to shut the government down, shut it all down. Why are we letting Congress get a paycheck? Some of them are withholding their checks, but that doesn't mean anything because they get money from their donors. So,
And they
it's
have
a
the power of being a member of Congress and doing nothing, which is like there's no job where you can do not do your job for 6 weeks and then just go back to normal and be like, "Hey guys, I got paid," or I said I didn't want my pay. Like I've been fired from so many different jobs, especially as a woman in these male-dominated fields. When I think about it, it kind of makes my blood boil that they are doing nothing every week. It's like Mike Johnson cancels the House sessions, like I think Don Bacon and some Democrats have worked together to come up with a way to save the premiums, I read, but so far that the House isn't in session, they're not doing anything. And it's like, do they expect to have their job in 2 years? Like, are they just going to go back to business as usual after this? I hope not, but probably.
And a lot of them don't like each other on the inside. That's another big problem that I don't think the media is doing a good job at sharing. A lot of them don't like each other, meaning in their own parties. We're starting to kind of see some of the breakaway, like with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's here in Georgia, and some of the other legislators. If you don't like each other, how in the world can you do the work for the American people? But that's another reason why I'm saying the American people are going to have to step up and say, okay, I got to make sure that I can feed my family. I got to make sure that I can have a job with dignity. I got to make sure that I'm not going to be replaced by a robot. And so I'm going to make the decision to not vote for any more incumbents in 2026. And that is what I think the solution is going to have to be.
I'm a Democrat, but I sometimes vote Republican. I voted for both of our Republican senators in Oklahoma. I voted for Tom Cole, who's chair of appropriations. Of course, the budget stuff that's happening right now is through the budget committee, which is Jody Arrington is the head of that, but Tom Cole also has votes on stuff, and he recently voted on the big beautiful bill. So it's like I really pride myself in reaching across the aisle and voting across the aisle, but things have continued to a point where I personally do feel like I cannot support like what's happened. I recently flew to Washington, D.C. and the TSA workers weren't getting paid, and the air traffic control wasn't getting paid. It's members of Congress are trying to fly out to different places at DCA, and their flight got delayed. And it's like, wow, that's all. I could think of many more bad things that happened in that case. The thing about politics I've learned is there's only so much you can do as a strategist working on messaging, like writing tweets. Some of it is just like seizing the moment and like stepping up to be a leader in the current time. Like, I really do think that what's happening right now with the economy is a great talking point for a leader, but it's like there's many people that will support a candidate just because I don't even know what motivates people to support different candidates anymore. I think some of it is a lot of people are actually excited about a candidate that is openly mean. Like, what do you see as the role of a strategist in this time? Because like you can strategize, you can come up with like a really good strategy, but you gotta also seize the moment. Like as a strategist, you probably can't change the politics of the situation, but just like capitalize on it. So where do you see the role of strategy in this current time? Like, do we wait and think for things to get better? Do we actively work to make it better? Do we watch some of it fall apart and then do something? Or
I think that messaging is always the key. And I think that there is a unified message with the American people. It involves the economy. I believe that both Republicans and Democrats alike, um, they want to help people who need help. How they do it may be a little bit different, but they both want to help people. Republicans are on food stamps just as much as Democrats. Republicans are gay, just like people who are in the Democratic Party. So there's more, like President Obama said, there's more that connects us than what keeps us apart, right? We have more alike than what's different, okay? So I think that if we can operate within those commonalities, we can create a message that will ultimately literally persuade the American people to support a candidate versus who you have right now. For example, and Republicans, let me tell you this, what I'm saying to you, a Republican said to me 2 years ago, and this is a very strong person in the Republican Party, said to me, Cherise, we got to get rid of all of them on both sides, all of them. I will never forget that conversation. And I was looking at her and listening to her at the same time when she said it. I was looking at her like she was crazy, like that's not going to ever happen. But exactly what she said to me, and she said it so clear, and even said afterwards, Cherise, if we don't do it now, it's going to get worse, and we're going to end up in a situation we cannot get out of. And this is a Republican. And for the record, I tell people all the time, my positions, I'm very much a liberal. I work with Republicans. My views are liberal. I'm fiscally conservative, but I have liberal values. But I work with both. And I've seen leaders in the Republican Party fund Democrats to run as Democrats and vice versa. So what I'm telling you is what leaders within the party, they do anyway. But what I do know for sure is we can't continue down the same path. And it really starts with messaging, having a unified message. We know that we need to have choice in education. We need to make sure that all of our children are learning. But by that same token, we want to make sure that we're not using standardized tests to create barriers instead of opportunities, because sometimes these standardized tests, they're created to keep children failing because there's money in failure. We got to ensure that there is equity in the public education system. We have to make sure that our scientists are equipped with all of the tools that they need to do research, and we need to have open dissent. We didn't have open dissent during COVID-19. We did not. That I know for sure. We didn't have open dissent. And now it's caused deleterious harms as a result of that. We need to make sure that families can afford a place to live. The cost of housing and just living in itself is expensive. I listened to the debate with Mamdani and Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. I was shocked when they said how much their rent costs. I was like, what? $7,900 a month for an apartment in New York? I mean, that's ridiculous. So we all share values of things that we want to see get better. And I think that we got to work together on both sides of the aisle. And I'm willing to do that. Now, that is what I'm willing to do. Of course, there are certain things I'm not gonna bow to. There are certain policies that I'm just not going to concede to. But for the most part, to at least get us out of this slump, absolutely. We do need to extend the Obamacare subsidies. Okay. We do need to fund SNAP benefits. We do need to come up with a plan to ensure that we have quality, affordable health care. We need to lower the cost of health care. And so I think that we all share that value. So let's work on it. The pharmaceutical industry, they run the American government. For every member of Congress, pharma has 2 lobbyists. I don't know if you know that. And that those 2 lobbyists are only represented by one pharmaceutical company. So for example, GlaxoSmithKline, 2 lobbyists. Merck, 2 lobbyists. So if we got to make a hard decision and say we're going to pull back a little bit from pharma dominating our healthcare system so we can get on a path to real healthcare, because Secretary Kennedy is right. We do have a chronic disease epidemic in this country. We need to do that. Those are shared values that Americans have. Cut the TV off. Let's just get together, get on podcasts or like what you're doing, and let's talk to one another and let's strategize a plan, a unified plan, so we can move forward.
Robert F. Kennedy being right, that always makes me feel uncomfortable. But I mean, it's like a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well,
Like,
I
I
think
don't,
with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the reason why there's a lot of information, the reason why people have this narrative cultivated about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is because they don't know the other side. See, when you only know one side of Bobby Kennedy, then that's what you're going to agree with. I do think that whatever we have in common, we do need to try to work together to at least move forward and move past where we are right now.
I think that your view is interesting. I've never met someone that said that everyone needs to basically be voted out of office. And usually, like in government shutdowns, I feel like it gets to a point where the lawmakers kind of like get to a place where they have a solution and it's popular, but I just don't see that happening in this case. Maybe it is time for new leadership, and how can we even get new leadership if like the people that are paying these people to stay in power are like sketchy dark money donors and super PACs and like billionaires. The money doesn't vote, people vote. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's definitely an interesting thing to get completely obsessed with for the next year, which is what I plan to do and always do
I
with
think
political
that's the
stuff.
I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to create a clear path, in my opinion, for a better direction, to go in a better direction. I don't see it any other way. I've been on calls with legislators. I just don't see it any other way. And I'm very certain about this. Even if they hear that there is a campaign to get them all out of office, watch how quick the government will reopen. Even if they hear that there is a campaign to get them out of office, they will begin to work together. Something has to make them get to where they can work together. And I think hearing that they're going to get fired, they'll do it. To know that regular people can run and win those seats, because you don't have to have a resume, if you will, to run for Congress. You just need to have a desire to help your community. And if you can put together good messaging, you get your ads together, you get your portfolio to how you want to reach your audience, you get all of that together, get a good political strategist and team, you can win. But you don't have to have a long list of a resume. That's a narrative that's been cultivated in the minds of people to keep you voting for the same people. You don't have to. You could get up as a podcaster and run. Who would have ever thought that Donald Trump would be president of the United States? That never crossed my mind. Never crossed my mind. He was a real estate developer. And now this man today is serving 2 terms as president. And I believe that because he won 2 terms is because he doesn't fit the mold of a traditional politician. And I know a lot of Democrats, my friends who are Democrats, they literally switched their votes over to vote for him. I was very surprised that even, Bobby Kennedy endorsed him because Bobby comes from a Democratic family, but I understood what the assignment was. I understood what he needed and what he wanted. And I understood that this was a political move, if you will. But nevertheless, I would have never expected Donald Trump to be president of the United States. So I think that if he can be president of the United States, the average Mary Smith next door or John Jones, who works in the federal government, can also hold office in Congress. I know that I want to see new leadership. I want fresh ideas. I want someone who cares about this country and who is not bought and paid for by lobbyists and special interests. I want to see what America can look like with those folks running Congress, not the people that we currently have.
So I have to ask you, are you available for people to hire you as a strategist for people that are running against incumbents?
I don't fundraise, but I will consult and help people with messaging. Absolutely. I definitely think anyone can do it. We've seen just in Atlanta, we just had an election last night, of course. We have some folks who are new to the political landscape that are literally getting ready to go into office. I'm working with one candidate right now. She got in a runoff and I think she's going to win. I'm pairing her up with the right people who can get her over the finish line. And I think she's going to get there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and she's a regular person. Just she's not in the in crowd, or she's not in the Democratic or Republican establishment. She's not in any establishment. She's just someone who cares about what is happening in her community. And she reached out to me and she said, "Cherise, I know you don't work on campaigns, but I need your help. Can you help me with this one little thing?" And I did. And now she's in a runoff, and I'm pairing her with some other folks who I know are going to get her over the finish line.
Well, that's great. You seem like a very strategic and savvy person. So that's really exciting for, I think, both her and you. Cherise, thank you for your time today. It has been really exciting to talk to an actual political strategist and try to wrap my brain around. And I think it was helpful for our viewers/listeners to try to wrap their mind around what can one possibly do in this time, especially scientists that kind of feel, I would say, helpless, or maybe not helpless, but like they're not existing in the world right now.
Just know that we are greater together, all right? And the power of the people are always greater than the people in power. And when we come together, we can move mountains.
That's a great quote to end with. Thank you for your time, Cherise. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much.